Buyana Monroe, 28, held a position as a senior analytical chemist at a major pharmaceutical research laboratory in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Born to immigrant parents from Eastern Europe, she demonstrated exceptional academic abilities from an early age. After graduating summa cum laude from MIT in 2015 with a degree in chemical engineering, she quickly established herself in the pharmaceutical industry. By 2021, she was leading a team of researchers in drug development, earning an annual salary of $145,000. Colleagues described her as methodical, precise, and uncompromising in her standards. Dr. Robert Henderson, her direct supervisor, noted in her 2020 performance review that Buyana's attention to detail and dedication to perfection make her an invaluable asset, though her intensity can sometimes create tension within the team. Her work focused primarily on developing analytical methods for new drug compounds, and she had published several papers in prestigious scientific journals between 2019 and 2021. Aidan Preston, 32, worked as a senior associate at Preston Wallace and Mitchell LLP, located in the heart of Boston's financial district. A graduate of Harvard Law School, class of 2014, Preston specialized in corporate litigation. His reputation grew significantly after successfully defending Morton Technologies in a $50 million corporate fraud case in March 2021. The case, which lasted 3 months, demonstrated Preston's exceptional ability to handle complex legal challenges. His annual income exceeded $200,000, and he was on track to make partner by 2023. Colleagues characterized him as charismatic, brilliant, and naturally persuasive. Managing partner David Wallace described him as one of the most promising young attorneys in Boston's legal community. Prior to the Morton Technologies case, Preston had successfully handled numerous high-profile corporate disputes, maintaining a remarkable 85% success rate in court proceedings. Tamira Monroe, 25, Buyana's younger sister, worked as a journalist at the Boston Daily, a mid-sized news publication. After graduating from Boston University's College of Communication in 2018, she secured an entry-level position covering local news. By 2021, she had advanced to writing feature stories, but struggled to achieve the recognition she desired. Her annual salary of $52,000 reflected her junior status in the industry. Editor-in-Chief Margaret Stevens noted that Tamira shows promise but often seems hesitant to pursue more challenging stories. Co-workers described her as agreeable, hardworking, but lacking in confidence. Her published articles primarily focused on community events and human interest stories, though she occasionally contributed to more significant news coverage. The Monroe sisters' relationship was complex, marked by Buyana's academic and professional achievements and Tamira's constant efforts to establish her own identity. Their parents, Elena and Victor Monroe, formerly Monrovich, immigrated to Boston from Belarus in 1992, seeking better opportunities. Victor worked as a maintenance technician while Elena cleaned houses, saving money to provide their daughters with quality education. The family lived in a modest apartment in Dorchester, where both sisters attended public schools. While Buyana excelled academically, earning multiple scholarships and awards, Tamira struggled to find her path, often overshadowed by her sister's achievements. Financial records from 2020 to 2021 showed stark contrasts in the sisters' lifestyles. Buyana owned a condominium in Cambridge valued at $850,000, drove a 2020 BMW 3 Series, and maintained substantial savings. Tamira shared a rented apartment in Somerville with 2 roommates and used public transportation. These economic disparities further strained their relationship, as documented in their personal correspondence and social media activity. The paths of these 3 individuals converged in early 2020, when Buyana and Aidan met at a charity fundraiser for Boston Children's Hospital. Security footage from the fundraiser showed their first interaction at 8:45 p.m., when Preston approached Monroe during the silent auction portion of the evening. This factual account is based on employment records, professional evaluations, interviews with colleagues and family members, financial documents, and surveillance footage. All salary figures and professional accomplishments have been verified through multiple sources and cross-referenced with public records. The engagement of Buyana Monroe and Aidan Preston was officially announced on April 15, 2021, during a private dinner at the Beacon Hill home of Preston's parents. Just 2 weeks prior to the announcement, Preston had visited Tiffany & Company, selecting a stunning 2.3-carat diamond engagement ring that cost him $47,500. Wedding preparations commenced immediately following the engagement announcement. The couple planned an extravagant celebration with a budget of $175,000. For their special day, they chose the historic Trinity Church in Copley Square, with the ceremony scheduled for October 15, 2021. The reception was to be held at the prestigious Four Seasons Hotel Boston. Their commitment to creating a memorable celebration was evident in the substantial venue deposits of $45,000, paid through a joint account they established in May 2021. Bojana appointed her sister Tamira as maid of honor on April 20, 2021. Despite expressing concerns to wedding planner Caroline Mitchell about her sister's reliability and organizational skills, Bojana remained adamant about this decision. The sisters' email correspondence intensified during this period, with wedding-related messages flooding their inboxes between April and October 2021. As the wedding planning progressed, Tamira and Aiden began meeting with increasing frequency. Their encounters, documented through credit card statements and security footage, painted a concerning picture. In mid-May, they shared a lengthy lunch at the elegant Stephanie's on Newberry. Early June saw them meeting for coffee at Thinking Cup, where what was planned as a quick meeting extended into a 90-minute conversation. Later that month, they were seen dining at Atlantic Fish Company, remaining there until well past 11. July brought another intimate lunch at Salty Girl, and by August, they were sharing evening drinks at the sophisticated Oaklawn Bar Plus Kitchen. The digital trail of their relationship grew increasingly complex. Their text message exchanges, later uncovered during the investigation, revealed a deepening connection. What began as simple wedding-related communications evolved into personal conversations, with their message count reaching 847 between May and October 2021, intensifying notably in the later months. Those around them began noticing subtle changes. Sarah Collins, one of the bridesmaids, observed an unusual chemistry between them during a wedding cake tasting in late July. At Preston's law firm, his partner David Wallace noted how Aiden's focus seemed to drift during crucial client meetings in September, his usual sharp attention replaced by an air of distraction and internal conflict. While this hidden dynamic was developing, Bojana maintained her characteristic dedication to both her career and wedding preparations. Her work calendar revealed her commitment to 60-hour work weeks, while simultaneously orchestrating wedding details. Her colleagues noted her increased stress levels, though they attributed it to typical pre-wedding anxiety. The wedding preparations continued at a steady pace. By early October 2021, every detail had been meticulously arranged. The guest list boasted 180 confirmed attendees, and the wedding registry at Bloomingdale's reflected the couple's elevated status, with gifts valued at over $50,000 already purchased. However, beneath this veneer of perfect planning, tensions were mounting. Hotel security footage captured moments of strain between the sisters during their planning meetings at the Four Seasons Hotel. During their final meeting in late September, what began as a discussion about wedding details escalated into a heated argument in the hotel lobby. Most telling were the communication patterns that emerged in early October. Cell phone records revealed a dramatic increase in contact between Aiden and Tamira, with their late-night calls becoming a regular occurrence. These conversations, taking place in the final days before the wedding, would prove to be harbingers of the dramatic events that were about to unfold. October 15, 2021, marked what was supposed to be Bojana Monroe's wedding day at Trinity Church in Copley Square, Boston. The timeline, reconstructed from security footage and witness testimonies, shows Bojana arriving at the church at 10:30 a.m. She spent the morning in the bridal preparation room with her mother Elena and 3 bridesmaids. The surveillance recordings would later become crucial evidence, showing the systematic nature of deception that occurred throughout the morning. According to witness statements, Tamira Monroe displayed notably suspicious behavior during the pre-ceremony preparations. Security cameras documented her leaving the bridal suite 6 times between 10:45 a.m. and 11:30 a.m., each absence lasting progressively longer. At 11:35 a.m., 25 minutes before the scheduled ceremony, Bojana noticed Tamira's extended absence. Wedding planner Caroline Mitchell's official statement to investigators revealed that Bojana had requested a search for both Tamira and Aiden, leading to the pivotal moment of discovery. The church's security system captured Buyana approaching the church's annex at 11:42 a.m. The following sequence of events was documented by both surveillance footage and multiple witness accounts, later collected by investigators. Upon opening the annex door, Buyana discovered Aiden and Tamira in an intimate embrace. Church maintenance worker George Peterson provided a sworn statement describing a sharp, piercing scream, followed by the sound of breaking glass. The security footage confirms Buyana's violent reaction, including the destruction of church property. The confrontation that followed was captured by the church's audio system, which had been active for ceremony preparations. Multiple witnesses provided consistent accounts of Buyana's emotional breakdown, with several direct quotes later documented in police reports. The church's surveillance system recorded the entire incident from multiple angles. At 11:55 a.m., security cameras captured Aiden and Tamira's hasty departure through the church's side exit. Their escape vehicle, Aiden's black BMW 5 Series, was tracked through traffic cameras and E-ZPass records heading west on the Massachusetts Turnpike. This evidence would later establish their premeditated plan to flee together. The aftermath of the discovery lasted approximately 2 hours. Security footage shows Buyana remaining in the church, exhibiting behavior that psychological experts would later describe as acute, emotional trauma. Witness statements from this period describe her as catatonic and dissociative, details that would become relevant during the subsequent criminal proceedings. Electronic records trace Aiden and Tamira's flight. Credit card transactions show them checking into a hotel in Albany, New York that evening. The following morning, they purchased 2 one-way tickets to Seattle, demonstrating their intent to permanently relocate away from Boston. The financial records associated with the canceled wedding would later be scrutinized during the investigation, establishing the substantial monetary impact of the betrayal. However, it was the emotional damage inflicted upon Buyana Monroe that would ultimately drive the tragic events that followed 6 months later. The final security footage from October 15th shows Buyana leaving the church at 2:17 p.m., supported by her parents. This image would be frequently referenced during the criminal trial, illustrating the profound psychological impact of the day's events on her mental state. In December 2021, Aiden and Tamira exchanged vows in a hasty Las Vegas ceremony at the Little White Chapel, with 2 random tourists as their witnesses. Their laughter during the ceremony had a desperate edge to it, as if they were trying to convince themselves that this quickie wedding could legitimize their betrayal. They chose Seattle for their fresh start, believing the city's constant rain and gray skies would help wash away their sins. They rented a modern apartment in Capitol Hill, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. The space was filled with new furniture and decorations. Nothing from their past lives in Boston, no family photos, no mementos. It was a deliberate attempt to create a life without history, without the weight of what they'd done. Tamira secured a position as a junior editor at the Seattle Times, throwing herself into work with frenzied determination. Her colleagues found her charming but intense, noting how she would sometimes stare at her computer screen for hours, barely moving, as if lost in some private nightmare. She volunteered for every late-night assignment, preferring the emptiness of the newsroom to the growing tension at home. Aiden joined Morrison and Walker, a prestigious law firm downtown. His reputation from Boston had preceded him, though carefully sanitized of scandal. At first, he excelled, working 60-hour weeks and taking on the most challenging cases. His new colleagues admired his dedication, unaware that he was simply running from his thoughts. On social media, they crafted a perfect narrative. Photos of them exploring Pike Place Market, hiking in the Cascades, enjoying romantic dinners at trendy restaurants. Each post was carefully staged, their smiles a bit too wide, their poses a bit too perfect. Tamira spent hours editing these photos, as if adjusting the brightness and contrast could somehow fix the darkness growing between them. But by late January 2022, the cracks began to show. It started with Aiden having just 1 drink after work to help him sleep. Soon that became 2, then 3, then entire evenings lost to expensive scotch at dimly lit bars. His colleagues began to notice his shaking hands during morning meetings, the slight slur in his speech during afternoon depositions, the growing collection of breath mints in his desk drawer. Tamira's unraveling was quieter but no less profound. She started seeing a therapist twice a week, struggling to articulate the guilt that was consuming her. During sessions, she would obsessively recount the wedding day, each retelling focusing on different details. The exact shade of Buyana's lipstick, the way the light hit her sister's face when she opened the church annex door, the sound of her heels on the stone floor as she ran away. Their apartment became a battlefield of unspoken regrets. Arguments would erupt over mundane things, unwashed dishes, misplaced keys, forgotten dinner plans. But they both knew these were just proxies for the real issues. The same passion that had led them to betray everything for each other now felt toxic, suffocating. "Sometimes I wake up and can't remember why we did this," Tamira confessed to her therapist in early March. "The guilt. It's like a living thing, growing inside me. I check Buyana's social media every day, but her accounts have been silent since October. It's like she's become a ghost, haunting me with her absence." Aiden's descent into alcoholism accelerated through February and March. He started missing court appearances, his sharp legal mind dulled by constant drinking. The prestigious corner office he'd been promised was given to someone else. His colleagues stopped inviting him to client meetings, tired of apologizing for his bloodshot eyes and alcohol-soured breath. Their nights became a predictable routine of dysfunction. Aiden would stumble home late, reeking of expensive whiskey and cheap regret. Tamira would pretend to be asleep, lying rigid in their bed, counting his unsteady footsteps down the hallway. Sometimes he'd sleep in the guest room, sometimes on the couch, the distance between them growing with each passing night. Their intimate moments, once charged with forbidden passion, became increasingly rare and mechanical. They touched each other like strangers, going through the motions of love without feeling it, both closing their eyes and trying not to think about who they were imagining instead. By the end of March, Tamira was secretly researching divorce attorneys. She started squirreling away money in a separate account, preparing for an escape from her escape. Meanwhile, Aiden had become a regular at every bar in Pioneer Square, drinking his way through an impressive collection of single malts, each glass a failed attempt to drown the memory of Buyana's face on that October morning. Their neighbors in the apartment building started avoiding them in the elevator, tired of overhearing their late-night arguments through the walls. The screaming matches would start over nothing, a misplaced remote control, an empty milk carton in the fridge, but would always end up circling back to the same themes: guilt, regret, and the growing realization that they had destroyed multiple lives for a love that was burning itself out. On April 15, 2022, exactly 6 months after her wedding day was destroyed, Buyana Monroe walked up the steps of a modern apartment building in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood. The doorman didn't question her entry. Her heels clicked against the polished concrete floors, each step measured, deliberate, like a metronome counting down to 0 hour. In her designer handbag was a bottle of 2015 Chateau Margaux, a $1,200 wine she'd purchased that morning. Next to it, a small amber prescription bottle of Ambien, prescribed by Dr. Richard Cohen for her persistent insomnia. The combination had been carefully researched over sleepless nights in her empty Boston apartment, where she'd spent months planning this moment between mindless days at her consulting job. The past 6 months had transformed Buyana. The successful management consultant with a bright future had become a hollow shell, going through the motions of life while nursing a growing obsession. She tracked every social media post from Tamira and Aiden, each carefully curated image of their perfect life in Seattle feeling like a personal assault. Their honeymoon photos in Maui, their Christmas celebration, their date nights at trendy Seattle restaurants. She archived them all, feeding her rage with each staged smile. The breaking point came on April 12th, when she ran into Jessica, Tamira's old college roommate, at a coffee shop in Back Bay. Jessica, unaware of the weight of her words, shared the truth behind those perfect Instagram posts. Aiden's growing alcoholism, the constant fights, Tamira's hints at divorce. "She's miserable," Jessica had said, stirring her latte. "Karma, I guess." But it was Tamira's article in the Seattle Times that truly crystallized Buyana's plans. Published on April 14th, it was a piece about domestic violence, forgiveness, and redemption. Tamira wrote about second chances, about how people deserve the opportunity to change. The irony of her sister preaching about moral redemption was too much to bear. That night, Buyana booked her flight to Seattle. Now, standing before apartment 1505, Buyana's hand was steady as she pressed the doorbell. Through the door, she heard familiar footsteps, the same steps that had walked down church aisles with her as children, had danced at countless family celebrations, had walked away with her fiancé 6 months ago. Tamira opened the door, and time seemed to freeze. The sisters stood face to face, mirror images distorted by betrayal. Tamira's expression cycled through shock, fear, and guilt in rapid succession. "Buyana," she whispered, her voice small and uncertain. "Hello, sister," Buyana replied, her voice eerily calm. "May I come in? I think it's time we talked." Inside the apartment, evidence of domestic discord was everywhere. Unwashed coffee cups in the sink, a half-empty bottle of scotch on the counter, throw pillows askew on the couch. The perfect life from Instagram was nowhere to be seen. Tamira moved nervously through the space, straightening things, filling the silence with nervous chatter about the weather, the flight, anything but the real reason for this visit. Buyana set her bag down carefully and pulled out the wine. "I thought we could share a drink," she said, watching Tamira's face. "Like we used to before everything." The bottle's label caught the afternoon light. The same vintage they'd shared at Tamira's college graduation. The sisters sat on the modern gray couch, the Seattle skyline a moody backdrop through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Tamira's hands shook as she reached for her glass. The wine was deep red, almost black in the dim light of the overcast day. Buyana watched as her sister took the first sip, then another. The familiar comfort of expensive wine loosening her shoulders, lowering her guard. They talked about their childhood, about family holidays, about their parents' disappointed faces at Christmas, when neither daughter came home. Tamira's words began to slur slightly as the doctored wine took effect. She tried to explain, to apologize, tears streaming down her face as she spoke of guilt and regret and sleepless nights. Buyana listened silently, her own wineglass untouched, watching as her sister's eyes grew heavy, her speech becoming more sluggish. When Tamira finally slumped over on the couch, Buyana stood up and walked to the kitchen. She opened drawers methodically until she found what she was looking for. A sharp set of Japanese kitchen knives, a wedding gift from their parents that she recognized from the registry she had helped create. The rain began to fall outside, pattering against the windows as Buyana selected a knife from the block. She tested its weight in her hand, remembering how Tamira had insisted on this specific brand, how they had debated the merits of German versus Japanese steel while planning her wedding registry. Now, as she watched her sleeping sister's chest rise and fall, those memories felt like they belonged to someone else, to a different life. She moved back to the couch, knife in hand, its blade catching the gray light from the windows. Outside, Seattle continued its normal afternoon rhythm, unaware of the scene unfolding 15 stories above its rain-slicked streets. In her prescription-induced sleep, Tamira's face was peaceful, almost innocent, like when they were children sharing a room and secrets and dreams. Buyana stood over her sister, the knife steady in her grip, 6 months of pain and betrayal crystallizing into this single moment. The same hands that had once braided Tamira's hair for prom, that had helped her move into her first apartment, that had adjusted her bridesmaid dress just 6 months ago, now held an entirely different purpose. The severity of what she was about to do settled over her like a heavy blanket, but there was no hesitation in her movements. In her mind, this wasn't murder. It was justice, restoration, the closing of a circle that had begun in a church annex half a year ago. "Sweet dreams, sister," Buyana whispered, raising the knife as the Seattle rain continued to fall. The 911 call came in at 6:42 p.m. on April 15, 2022. Aiden Preston's voice was barely coherent as he screamed into the phone, having returned home to find his wife's body on their gray designer couch, the knife still protruding from her chest. The wine glasses on the coffee table, the peaceful expression on Tamira's face, and the carefully positioned body initially led Seattle PD's homicide detectives Marcus Rodriguez and Sarah Chen to consider suicide. The case might have ended there if not for Detective Chen's thorough canvass of neighboring buildings. Security footage from the art gallery across the street showed a woman matching Tamira's description entering the apartment building at 2:15 p.m. At 4:30 p.m., the same figure exited, but subtle differences in her gait and posture suggested it wasn't the same person. During his initial interview, conducted in a small room at Seattle PD's headquarters, Aiden sat with his head in his hands, reeking of alcohol and despair. "I should have known," he kept repeating. When Detective Rodriguez pressed him, Aiden finally revealed the threatening messages he'd been receiving from Buyana over the past month. The messages, recovered from his phone, painted a disturbing picture. "How's married life treating you? Better than our engagement, I hope. Do you think about October 15th as much as I do? Everything has a price. Sometimes payment comes due when you least expect it." The investigation shifted to Boston, where detectives found Buyana's apartment in Back Bay to be a shrine to methodical planning. Her laptop contained detailed research on drug interactions and knife wound placement. A leather-bound journal held draft after draft of what appeared to be Tamira's suicide note, each version more refined than the last. Airline tickets and hotel reservations showed she'd been planning the trip to Seattle for weeks. Most damning was the empty bottle of prescription sleeping pills and a receipt for the Chateau Margaux, purchased the morning of the murder. The wine bottle found at the crime scene still had traces of the crushed medication when tested by the crime lab. The trial began on June 1, 2022, in the King County Courthouse. Buyana sat perfectly still throughout the proceedings, her designer suits and elegant posture making her look more like a CEO than a murder defendant. She showed no emotion as the prosecution presented their evidence. The security footage, the threatening texts, the meticulous planning documented in her journal. Her defense attorney, James Morrison, attempted to build a case around temporary insanity and extreme emotional distress. He brought in psychologists who testified about the traumatic impact of the wedding day betrayal, arguing that Buyana had suffered a complete psychological break. But it was Buyana herself who demolished this defense strategy during her testimony. Taking the stand on June 15th, she spoke with chilling clarity about her actions. "Yes, I killed my sister," she stated, her voice steady. "I watched her plan my wedding for months, pretending to be happy for me, all while sleeping with my fiancé. I watched them run away together, leaving me standing in a church in a wedding dress. Then I watched them post about their perfect new life on Instagram, as if they had done nothing wrong. So yes, I planned her death with the same attention to detail that she once used to plan my wedding. And no, I don't regret it." The jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning their verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. During sentencing, Judge Patricia Martinez spoke at length about the premeditated nature of the crime, the betrayal of familial trust, and the complete lack of remorse shown by the defendant. "Ms. Monroe," Judge Martinez said, "you have demonstrated not just the capacity for violence, but a frightening ability to plan and execute a murder with cold precision. Your sister's actions may have been morally reprehensible, but they did not justify her death. This court sentences you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole." Buyana's only response was a slight smile. The case became known in legal circles as the wedding revenge murder, a cautionary tale about the thin line between love and hate, betrayal and revenge. Aiden Preston left Seattle shortly after the trial, his whereabouts unknown. Some say he returned to Boston. Others claim he moved abroad, trying to outrun the guilt of having set these tragic events in motion. Buyana Monroe now resides in the Washington Corrections Center for Women. According to prison staff, she keeps to herself, reading extensively and maintaining an immaculate cell. Her only visitor has been her mother, Elena, who comes once a month, though they sit in silence more often than they speak. The gray couch where Tamira died was eventually donated to Goodwill. The apartment in Capitol Hill remained empty for months before being sold to a young tech couple who knew nothing of its history. The knife set was logged into evidence, where it remains to this day, a reminder that sometimes the deepest wounds are inflicted by those closest to us.